I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and welcome to Genre Bender's Obscurities and Flawed Gems, where we look at the best stuff you've never heard of. Dinosaurs may be extinct, but they're still everywhere.
They have a niche carved out in movies, TV, books, comics, games, action figures, but surprisingly, they don't turn up that often in music. No matter the genre, it feels like the world of music just isn't very interested in dinosaurs. Not even the band named after the most famous dinosaur species in the world has a single song about its namesake. I've searched high and low, near and far, looking for any examples of dinosaur-themed music, so I know. Victoria's delivered some epic dinosaur tunes of the kaiju variety, but I figured there had to be more, and I had to find it.
Then one day, a random post in a Facebook group I'm part of alerted me to a trio of rock and roll albums all about dinosaurs, paleontology, and prehistoric pop culture. What's more, these albums initially materialized when I was a kid, and I really still can't believe that I never heard of them until just now. They are collectively known as the Dinosaur Tracks Trilogy. Before you get too deep into things, how about a little backstory? Good idea, Snazzy. It's important to know what brought these albums into existence.
These two madmen are Donald F. Glut and Pete Von Schally. Odds are you're familiar with their work in one way or another. Don Glut has been involved in multiple franchises in multiple mediums, including Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Tarzan, Jonny Quest, The Flintstones, and Spider-Man, to name but a select few. Pete Von Schally, meanwhile, did storyboards for a multitude of films, including Mars Attacks, Pumpkinhead, Darkman, and The Green Mile, to say nothing of his various comic book illustrations, including original series like Tyrannostar.
Now those are some impressive resumes. You're telling me I'd love to have a career half as successful as either of them. Anyway, these two first met at a comic book convention in 1977, where they bonded over a shared love of dinosaurs and the ability to play rock and roll music. That's right, they're both accomplished musicians. At this point, it is fair to wonder if there's anything these two haven't done.
A few years later, in 1987, Glut began hosting a public access show entitled Dinosaur Tracks, which struck a balance between highlighting paleontology and dinosaurs in popular media. He and Von Schally got together to write a theme song for the show, but it turned out they couldn't stop at just one tune. Eventually, they had enough songs to fill an entire album, and it would have been a shame to let all that go to waste. So they formed the Iridium Band and released what would become a trilogy of albums painting a Mesozoic soundscape.
Glut and Von Schally had 4 goals in mind while making these albums.
First, they had to contain accurate paleontological facts. Second, they had to cover a wide variety of rock and roll styles. Third, they had to have a good sense of humor to them. And fourth, they had to appeal to all ages. Now, before you get the wrong idea, appealing to all ages doesn't mean this is kids' music. As Glut himself emphatically states, this isn't Barney. Rather, this was meant to be enjoyed by everyone of any age, young or old.
Ergo, the albums don't contain any objectionable content, which they really didn't need anyway. The albums were originally released between 1989 and 1994 on cassette tape, a format which these days is as extinct as the dinosaurs themselves. Recently, they've been reissued on CD. These copies were actually sent to me by Donald Glut himself, so big thanks to him for that. I still intend to be honest, of course, so I think it's time we give these albums a listen to see what they sound like. Don't you mean here? You know, for something that doesn't have hairs, you are really good at splitting them. Fine, we'll hear what they sound like, starting where it is most natural to do, at the beginning.
Dinosaur tracks in the ground.
The first album in the series, simply entitled Dinosaur Tracks, sets the tone for everything that will follow.
It opens with the theme song that started it all, which is a fun little bouncy tune to kick things off. From there, the dominant style is reminiscent of the earliest rock and roll. You might say it has a sort of malt shop feel to it, and I mean that in a good way.
So even for the time, the music was retro, and it fits the subject matter surprisingly well.
The style, however, does branch out depending on the subject matter, including such styles as surf rock and even a little bit of British invasion hard rock.
The subject matter, by the way, provides way more material than you might expect.
The songs can be separated into 3 different categories. Category 1 contains songs literally about dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. Category 2 contains songs about paleontology, or from the perspective of a paleontologist, and Category 3 contains songs about dinosaur culture, from entertainment to the general public's fascination with the subject.
Being able to categorize the songs in this way helps demonstrate how the album avoids getting stale on the lyrical side. When combined, you get an album that provides a little something for everybody. Missing a Bone Blues is a paleontological lament about finding an incomplete skeleton.
I got the missing a bone blues.
But if you want something a bit more intense, Extinction is right up your alley, and I think its title is self-explanatory. And if you prefer a fun sci-fi romp, you can listen to The Unknown Lost Island and get your fix.
The unknown lost island, that time forgot.
In short, this first album makes a great first impression.
The one thing I can really critique it for is that the sound has a bit of an echo to it, as though the final mix wasn't completely polished. But that's such a minor issue that I hesitate to put too much emphasis on it. I mean, it's not like you can't understand the music. You heard the excerpts yourself, it's not that bad.
If Dinosaur Tracks was just a novelty, it would be a great example thereof. But as already mentioned, this was not the end.
That was before those dinosaur rebels.
The first album set the bar. The second album, More Dinosaur Tracks, raises it.
This time around, the album's music moves a bit more into the early 60s. It doesn't abandon the styles from the first album, but rather adds new ones into the mix. The audio also contains that extra bit of polish that makes it sound as good as it possibly can.
It's not just the music that expands, though, it's also the lyrical content. Fossil Feud, for example, is about the Bone Wars, an insane period in which Othniel Marsh and Edward Cope blew through their fortunes and goodwill in the scientific community just trying to outdo each other.
Mammoth against Cope. It was Marsh against Cope.
Gee, wish we'd known about that song the last time we visited Nate on Monster Island. C'est la vie. La vie. We also get an interesting ballad in the form of Trees of Stone, an ode to the petrified forest.
Trees of stone. Those trees of stone.
A little bit of country is worked in for Little Horses, an ode to creatures like the Eohippus.
A dead bushy they were still too small to carry my weight.
But the real standouts, to me at least, are Dragons of the Air and Nomenclature Blues. The first one is a dreamlike ode to pterosaurs done in a style similar to Riders on the Storm by The Doors.
Dragons of the air gave me quite a scare, soaring everywhere in the night.
The latter, meanwhile, is another blues number that incorporates the complicated names of various defunct species. And it just has to be heard to be believed.
Scolosaurus, Coelacanthus, Yaleosaurus.
More Dinosaur Tracks is a worthy successor to the first album, and might even surpass it. Where to go from here? Let's find out.
Rhythm and bones, rock.
And so we come to the end with Dinosaur Tracks again.
Now, the title may sound a bit wonky at first, as if the album is admitting up front that this is more of the same, and technically it is, but that doesn't mean the trilogy ends on a sour note.
Dinosaur Tracks again adds even more musical styles to the mix, this time drawing more from the late 60s and 70s. This is most evident in the song Jurassic Punk, an ode to Allosaurus done in a fast-paced punk style.
Jurassic Punk. Jurassic Punk. He takes the lead.
Hard rock also makes a return in Dinosaur Invasion, the closest these albums ever get to indulging in kaiju-ega.
Well, it's a dinosaur invasion. They're attacking all creation.
Meanwhile, soft rock is implemented for Last Living Dinosaur, an admittedly skeptical but still amusing song about cryptozoology.
A last living dinosaur.
And the album closes out with the ultra-colossal Dinosaur Circus, which is more of a spoken word piece that feels like if P.T. Barnum were in charge of Jurassic Park.
And here come the sauropods! Gigantic and majestic!
Why Don and Pete decided to end it after only 3 albums, I don't know. Maybe they just decided 3 was enough. I certainly can't believe it was because they were lacking in creativity and energy, because this album delivers on both. Really, all of them do. I genuinely do love these Dinosaur Tracks albums.
The whole trilogy is loads of fun from start to finish. You can tell that Don Glutt and Pete Von Schally enjoyed composing and recording these things, and the only way I can imagine someone not liking them is if they really hate rock and roll as a genre, or just have zero interest in dinosaurs. Either way, it would be that hypothetical person's loss, because these really are a joy to listen to, and I'm glad they've been brought back after being out of print for so long.
And the best part of all, there's no downside to resurrecting these dinosaurs. Until such Hold up there, Omni. Mr. Glutt sent you a 4th CD, don't forget, and I think you would be remiss if you didn't give it at least some attention. Oh yeah, that's right. Thanks for the reminder. Now, this 4th album will be a bit of a thematic deviation because it's not dinosaur related, but I still think you'll find it interesting. Okay, so the backstory goes like this.
From 1959 to 1962, Don Glutt, then a teenager, made a bunch of no-budget horror movies based on the classic Universal and Hammer horror films in his spare time. Later, between 1967 and 1968, he played bass in a band originally named Penny Arcade, then renamed the Armadillo when David Price joined. Many years later, in 2006, Frontline Entertainment released Glutt's old cinematic endeavors on DVD, but the release needed music. Being the hands-on type, Glutt reunited with Price to record that soundtrack as Arcadillo, and the result is the original motion picture soundtrack for I Was a Teenage Movie Maker.
This album is entirely instrumental rock, done in a 50s style with a flair for the spooky and macabre. I believe it's pronounced macabre. Whatever. The result is 12 tracks that have a nice retro sound to them.
The combination of surf rock rhythms with minor key melodies kind of reminds me of the opening theme for the Munsters, and I mean that in a positive way because that opening is iconic. Each piece manages to sound just different enough that the tunes don't blend together, and despite sounding like the music of another time, it feels fresh and fun.
It'd be great to play at a Halloween party. We really should throw one of those this year, Snazzy. That would require us to have friends, Omni. Oh yeah, good point. Anyway, that's the skinny on the 4th CD.
In the end, I have to say that I enjoyed every single one of these things, and I know how much you guys love dinosaurs, and we've all been collectively looking for other examples of them appearing in music. Well, these albums provide exactly what we've been searching for. They're familiar in style, different in subject matter, and just all around fun. Right now, the only way to listen to these albums is to get them physically on CD from the official website. So now would be a good time to dust off the old CD player. Trust me, the Dinosaur Tracks trilogy is well worth it.
As for me, I've got to get my own act together. Clearly, I've still got a long way to go. But anyway, Dinosaur Tracks. Great albums. Check them out. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. You know, I'd say there's plenty of room for dinosaur-themed rock out there in the world. Any aspiring musicians had better take heed.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books: Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.